That's it.
Well, good morning, YouTube. All right, guys, it is Wednesday morning now. As you can see, Goliath is back inside the shop undercover, which is a good thing because the skies are looking a little ugly again today, like it may rain. The proper airbags are in. We had to go from a Firestone to a Continental, but it looks like they're all going to work. So we are going to work on getting the airbags in first, getting the new lines run to them, because we had to crimp off the lines going to the old bags so that we get the front bags to air up. So we're just going to replace all of that. But also, as you can see, the differential chunk is here. It got dropped off this morning as I was over here talking with the guys about getting Goliath moved in here. So we're looking forward to hopefully everything going very, very smooth today. We've got Mikey, right? Yep. Mikey's going to help us today, and we're going to see how fast we can get this done. With all luck, this truck will be roadworthy by the end of the day, and tomorrow we can head out and go visit some family. All right, guys, so Mike is down there in the pit putting on the airbags. There's really not enough room for two of us to be down there at the same time doing what needs to be done. So Talon and I are kind of left with not much else to do. So what we did is we started comparing the new differential chunk to the old one, counting bolts, measuring spaces, just kind of making sure that it is in fact the right one before we pull it out. And to the best of our knowledge, it looks like it's the right piece. Now, we can't change that differential over the pit. So when we're done with what we're doing in the pit, we're going to move Goliath over to another bay, and that's where we will pull the front wheels off, well, not the front wheels, but the wheels off of the front drive, take those axles back out, and then start removing the differential. All right, guys, it is almost noon o'clock, and we've got the airbags in and done. I think we've still got to bolt the shocks back in, but that should be relatively easy. Now we've moved our attention to the brake chamber. That brake chamber was leaking a little bit when the brakes were released, and it was causing a problem with that brake not releasing as fast as the other ones are, leaving a little bit of drag on there. And like everything else, it didn't come out easy. Lots of issues trying to get it in and out of there, but they've got the new one in stock, so we're trying to get it all set up now to put back in its place. So here, the cavity where the brake chamber was. Michael is up top prepping the new one. Alan is bolting in the final assembly on the rear shocks now that all the new airbags are in place, and we even routed brand new lines to them. We will still need to zip tie the lines up. New brake chamber on its way in. All right, looks like we are done over the pit. So we've moved Goliath over to the next bay that doesn't have the pit so that we can get on the ground and start pulling this differential. But at least problem number one is completely fixed. Now we're just gonna work on problem number two. All right, we actually made pretty good quick work of moving Goliath over, getting the wheels off and pulling the axle shafts back out. Now we got to disconnect the drive shaft going into the first drive and coming out of the first drive. So we got to bust apart a couple of U-joints there and take the yokes off, and then we should be ready to start unbolting the actual rear end assembly, taking it out. I think there's one airline going to the locker, and that should be about it. All right, guys, so we've got the front drive shaft taken out of the power divider. Mikey did that, and then Talon and I took the second drive shaft off of the back of the first drive, but we're having trouble getting the yoke off of there. We got the nut off, but we can't get the yoke to pull off of the shaft, so we're going to wait until we get the differential out of the front and then try to drive that shaft out from the other side through the yoke, and hopefully we can break it free then, and then we can just reinstall it afterwards. But just, you know, tight areas to work down here, and everything's covered in grease. We're pretty nasty for the most part. There's only a couple more bolts at the top of the housing that we've got to get loose, and it will be physically unbolted. Then we're going to try to slide the transmission jack right there underneath here to support the weight and pick it up and pull it out. Alright, so the plan worked. We got the differential out of the run housing. It is on the transmission jack. The problem is now it's too high to get it out from underneath the Goliath, so we're going to try and roll it onto this piece of cardboard, and we can maybe slide it out from underneath. Alright, so we got our cardboard in place. We're getting ready to loosen up the strap and let the differential basically fall onto the cardboard. Kind of like that. Not as smooth as we wanted it to be, but if we can get it all the way into the cardboard. I'm just trying to also not scratch it on the floor too. Not dragging the cardboard ain't gonna be so easy.
Oh, I'm not that good.
Huh?
I said I wasn't that good.
Thank you, Nate. Cameraman Nate, guys. All right. That big son of a gun is out. Well, guys, you know the light at the end of that tunnel that we saw at the beginning of this? Just got smaller. There's still a light at the end of the tunnel, but I have a feeling we're not getting out of here today. So now that we got the front differential pulled out, we found the actual problem, and it turns out it's not in this differential. So when the drive shaft comes into the front of the power divider, it goes through the locking assembly and transfers out to the rear drive through the second drive shaft. And when we thought it was bad, it was because the front drive shaft would spin, the truck wouldn't go anywhere. When we locked in the divider, it would go anywhere. And we thought that at that point we were locking in the rear end, and our thought process was all wrong. And the sad thing is, when I explained to the people what was going on, none of them caught it either. When you hit the power divider, you're actually locking in the front rear end, which means the power wasn't transferring to the rear. So when we got the differential out, then Talon and I were trying to get the yoke off of the back piece, like I mentioned we had trouble with before, so he was trying to drive it out from the front. I realized that that shaft that went through from the main drive shaft through the rear end to the second drive shaft is actually sheared right there. So it's kind of hollow on the inside. And if you look at this end, that little nub goes in there. So there's a weak spot in that shaft. But as Talon was trying to drive it out, I was grabbing this end and I was just trying to wiggle, and I noticed that part of the shaft that my hand on was wiggling more than the part that was going through the body. So it's looking like the big piece that we ordered isn't actually what we needed. The shaft is what we needed. So we weren't transferring power to the rear. When we were locking it, we were actually locking the front, and everything in the front was working. So now I got to try to find this piece before we put it all back together. All right, guys, so Talon and I got back down there, and we were able to pull that whole bearing assembly thing out. So it looks like it's a double bearing that's in like a housing that slides into the back of the differential. It looks like there's a snap ring that holds the bearings in, so it may be rebuildable. It may come as assembly, that I don't know. So we're trying to track down that number or that part as well. If everything is available, we have verified that that shaft that's broken can be put in from the back side. Now that a whole assembly's out, it will work. So what I want to do, if that's the case, is go ahead and get the new differential installed and get that front drive shaft hooked up, get that air line hooked up. That way everything there is at least done. Get the axle slid back in. That way when this other part or parts do come in, we can slide the rest of it in. It's getting late today though, and I know these guys are going to want to go home soon, and right now Goliath can't move. Well, not without being towed. With the brake system and the airbags being fixed, we can at least air it up and release the brakes, but then we'd have to tow it through the parking lot and try to park it. That would not be an easy task, especially trying to back it into the spot in front of our trailer. And then we would have to do the same thing to get it back over here when that time came as well. So we're looking for parts, trying to figure things out. Don't know what the answer is just yet. All right, guys, it has been very difficult to get good camera footage down here because there's nowhere to work. There's been 3 of us down there. Like Talon helped to push and pull the jack. Mike trying to get things lined up, and me trying to tilt and move the jack. It's been challenging to say the least, but the diff is in its hole. Mike is down there right now tightening up all the bolts. Talon and I have got the axles prepped with the new seals on them. So once it's drawn in all the way, we can slide these in and lock it all down. So we're getting really close to having this part back done. We still got to hook up the front drive shaft. I did not hear back from the driveline company whether they can get that other intermediate shaft to me or not. So, and they're closed now, so I probably won't hear back from them until tomorrow. Well guys, it is 8 p.m. and we're giving up for the night. You might notice that we are still inside the shop. Shop manager just drove away. He is allowing us to keep Goliath inside for the night and is basically giving us access to the shop. So we're done. We're not going to do any more. The center chunk is in, the axles are back in, but we still got to hook up the drive shaft, and we still were not able to locate that other shaft that we called about. That company never called me back, but it was late in the day. Hopefully we'll hear more tomorrow. Anyway, so we are absolutely filthy. Well, Talon and I are absolutely filthy. So yeah, showers. I'm definitely looking forward to the shower, big time. Well, good morning again, YouTube. All right, different day, same video, I know. So we took showers last night, came back and tried to get a good night's sleep, back up at 7 a.m. Shop opens at 7:30. Tell you what, it was a little bit weird sleeping in Goliath inside a shop. It was nice and quiet, very peaceful, but it just seemed weird. I think that was the very first time ever that we've done that. But anyway, this morning, back at trying to find the part that we needed, that shaft. I did a bunch of measurements, counted all the splines. The people that I talked to yesterday never called back by the close of day, so I called them back this morning and they're working on it again. So we're kind of at a standstill. Everything else is pretty much put back together. This morning, Mikey got under there and reconnected the drive shaft. Last night, we had the axles all in and installed. Realistically, we could throw the wheels on this and put some oil in the diff. We haven't put oil in the diff yet. There's a weird thing with this differential where there's a hole at the bottom that no bolt hole goes through. Don't know why it's there. It was on the old one as well, and it was on the one that we took out 5 years ago as well. So it's just the way they're built. So what I'm thinking about doing is actually putting one of my thread inserts in there and expanding it with maybe some of that 3M marine adhesive sealant to really hold that piece in there. That way I can just kind of thread a bolt into it, cut a bolt short so it doesn't actually protrude into the rear end. It's the best thing I could think of to do with it. The last time we put the rear end in, the shop that was helping us there, they put a nut and bolt through it, packed it full of silicone, and then squeezed it tight. But that left the bolt head on the inside and there's like a clearance issue there, and I don't think the thing was even sitting exactly right, and we always had a little bit of a leak from there. So I'm trying to find a way to solve the problem without doing something that is going to cause another problem. And right now that seems like it. But at the moment I'm cleaning up tools. Until we find the right part, I've got a lot of tools scattered everywhere. I'm going to get these all cleaned up so that when the parts that we do need come in, it's not such a cluster screw down there. All right, so our idea with the riv nut wasn't going to work. None of the riv nuts I had were quite big enough to fill the 5/8 hole that is in the drive unit. So 5/8 bolt slides right in, but even the biggest one I had, once it expanded, it wasn't enough to actually touch the sides. So we're down to like two options. We're gonna either get an expandable drain plug. I called the local O'Reilly, and they've got one that will fill a 5/8 hole that I can put in there and just crank it down and expand it. But what I'd rather do, because I worry about the security of that, what I'd rather do is, we've got a 3/4 inch bolt. So we've already got a 5/8 hole. So if we tapped it to fit this bolt, cut the bolt down shorter, then we can just put a bolt in it. Non-structural, so it doesn't have to be super tight. They don't have to be even really strong threads. Just enough to torque this down with some thread sealant on it to stop oil from coming out. It would actually act as a secondary drain plug. So we're trying to find a tap that's the right size. We can't find the tap. But I think we're gonna go ahead and jump in the truck, when the shop truck's here, and we're gonna go see what we can find. Maybe even like a drain plug repair kit at one of the auto parts stores would work. I'm just gonna go look at what my options are. All right guys, it's been a while since we last talked. We went to some hardware stores and we didn't have any luck finding a tap that we wanted. So we went ahead and got the 5/8 expandable drain plug, put it in there, a little bit of silicone as well, just to kind of hold it in tight. That's gonna have to work for now. I did find an 18mm drain plug, which is about the size we need, but I couldn't find an 18mm by 1.5 tap anywhere locally to be able to tap the threads. So my plan is, once this break-in oil has done its job in here and I drain it all out, and of course, you know, I'll put some Amsoil in it later on, I will have ordered the proper tap and that drain plug, and then I can just go ahead and tap it and put that plug in it at that time. But for now, it'll hold oil. Still no luck on the output shaft or the through shaft that we need, or the bearing assemblies. However, I did just go over to a machine shop that's behind the TA across the street here, and I showed them the shaft, and they are confident that they can weld it back together and make it right. So we're gonna give that a try. If anything, it gives me a spare or a backup or something. If they come through with a brand new one, I'll definitely put the brand new one in there, but I'm trying to think of other ways around this if for some reason we can't find that part. Well, good morning again, YouTube. Day number 3 on the repair. Day number 2, we never found what we needed. But now I gotta find some coffee. So I think this is day number 9 that I've used this box to go in and get coffee in the morning. You know, I'm always up before Talon and Katie, and I want my coffee right away. So I usually go in and I grab coffee for all 3 of us, and I bring it back out. Carrying 3 coffees through the parking lot, especially large ones, can be a little challenging. So one day, inside, this gentleman named JR that works here, he gave me a box, put my cups in it, stuffed it full of paper towel to keep everything from spilling, and I can carry all 3 coffees with one hand. It's been very convenient. I just wish I hadn't done this for 9 days in a row, recycling this box. Uh-oh, looks like they're having a meeting next to the truck. So, kind of as a joke, every morning when I go in there with the box, I fill up the 3 coffees, I shove them back in the box, and I put the paper towel around it to keep it stable. I go up to the register and jokingly, I say to Terry, the cashier that's there almost every morning, I said I would like to purchase a half a case of coffee refills, please. And she always laughs, rings me up, and we go on our way. So all in all, yesterday wasn't very exciting. I know I didn't record a whole lot. It's because not a whole lot actually happened on the truck. Mike went down there and, put the drive shaft in and tidied up a couple things. I did some cleanup on the carrier bearing assembly for the shaft that we're trying to find so that it's, prepped and cleaned and ready to go in. It had a few nicks and burrs on the gasket surface, so I smoothed stuff like that out. But mostly yesterday was, running around trying to find things and on the phone with people trying to find parts. And it was boring stuff that really doesn't record well or, add any real value to the video. So we kept it kind of short. I did drop off that shaft that's broken at the machine shop, and they should be welding it up this morning. So I'm hoping I'll hear from them soon. Still don't like the idea of a welded shaft, but once the machine shop looked at it, they realized that shaft had been welded once before, possibly why it failed. I mean, I broke it, but maybe that's why it broke, is because it was not as strong as an OEM shaft. So if we can't find one, I have no problem putting this one back in. It's not what I want to do. I want a brand new shaft that's going to be super strong. But if it went that long with the welded shaft and this weld shop, machine shop, wasn't happy with the way they did the work, they believe they can do it much better, then hopefully it'll be even better than that. It'll still get us where we need to go for the foreseeable future until we can find the original OEM shaft and just replace it. This shaft can actually be replaced from outside the rear end in between the diffs by just removing the small drive shaft, and then this whole assembly can come out. So it really wouldn't be that hard to replace in the future when I find the proper replacement part. All right, just as I was bringing Jessa back in, put her inside, it's like, 5 minutes after 8 a.m. Machine shop just called me. It is done. So we're gonna see if one of the guys will give me a ride over to the machine shop. And then we're just waiting for the bearing assembly. See, this one came completely apart yesterday. The bearings and the U-joint. I've already got the seal. And we should be able to reassemble everything. All right, one welded shaft, not too bad. They only charged me $150 to weld it all up. I rolled it on the floor. It is as true can get. We came back over here last night trying to find some numbers on this that Camerata was asking for, and the numbers weren't there, and I kind of knew they weren't there, but we wanted to double check. And they had it all mocked up in the lathe. They had it all prepped for welding, and they did a fantastic job. Okay, we now have the welded shaft, the bearing carrier, and the yoke. Everything is here. I've got the seal for it over there on another bench. Just waiting for the bearings to come in for here, and we can assemble this whole thing and then slide it in place. All right, guys, sure, the shaft is done, as you know. The new bearings came in, the new U-joint came in. So I officially have all of the pieces that I need to assemble it. But here's the thing. The races that fit into that bearing carrier is a very tight fit. This is actually the race that came out of it, and you can see it doesn't just drop in there. It's pretty tight, and it looks like the new one is just an itsy-bitsy teeny tiny bigger. So what I've done is I've got the races in the freezer inside Goliath. We got the same situation with the bearing on the shaft. So this is the old bearing, and even though we kind of drove this out of there, we cannot get it to go back onto the shaft. And in many cases with differentials, you've got to heat the bearing to get it to expand to go down over the shaft. So I have got both races and the shaft in the freezer. And then what we're probably going to do is, once they get good and cold, we're going to break out the toaster oven. We're going to put both of the bearings and maybe even this housing in the toaster oven to heat them up. That way they expand as the other pieces contract. And we should be able to just stack everything together and then pin it in or clip it in. Got a big circlip that holds it all together afterwards. That's the plan, but now it's just time. Got to let that stuff freeze. I do this same concept when you're trying to put a new flywheel onto a clutch basket on a Harley Davidson. It's a press fit. So what I do is I put the basket in the freezer, get it really cold, and then I suspend the ring from a couple pieces of wire, and I heat it up with a torch and just get it nice and warm, and then you set it right down over top of it, walk away from it, let it cool, and as it shrinks the ring and the basket expands, it becomes a press fit. Okay guys, it's been about an hour since I put the shaft and the races in the freezer. And I don't know how long it will actually take to get that entire shaft frozen per se. You know, it's fairly thick. I'm gonna give it a little bit longer, maybe another half an hour or so. I'd imagine anything out there that long will have an hour and a half in, you know, 28 degrees or whatever our freezer is set at would constrict pretty well, and hopefully these bearings will drop over. Got the bearings, been in here for at least half an hour, 45 minutes now. I've got it set on about 350 degrees. So hopefully they have opened up just enough to where this slip fit will work nicely. Now, in theory, this should be our final steps, and then we can do final assembly. So while I'm kind of waiting here, I've just been going through everything we've done, double checking, double torquing all the bolts, held the rear end in, the axles in, the drive shaft, the U-joints, just kind of double checking everything. Make sure there was nothing we forgot. Okay guys, with our cryogenically frozen shaft and the heated bearings, they literally just fell into place. No manipulation required. Having a little bit more challenge with the races. I'm actually having to grind just a little bit off. These races, when you measure them, are like half a thousandths bigger than the old races were. I say when you measure them, I didn't actually measure them, but when I put them on a table, I can feel there's a lip going up onto the new one. So trimming a little bit off on the bench grinder, and then we're still freezing these and then heating up the carrier, so hopefully it'll all work. All right guys, so I'm getting the gloves back on so I can handle the hot stuff. Talon is going to get the frozen race. We're going to try this one more time. I don't see Mike because it leaves everything blurry in the background. All right, so let's see if this works. Oh, it's going. It's snug, but it's going. Man, it just stopped right there. I wonder if they've actually got a press. All right guys, it was really difficult to record while Talon was holding it. I was trying to get the race to seat and then trying to get the snap ring in there, but it is all in, all together, spins nice and free. No play in it. All we gotta do is let this cool down now. We'll drive the seal in. All right, just when we thought we were out of the woods, the seal that they gave me doesn't fit the bearing housing, nor does it fit the yoke. So we're gonna load up in the truck. I guess we're gonna run over Napa. We can't find a number on the seal. It's just worn off too bad. So we're gonna see if they can compare it and find something for us. But we're gonna take the yoke, we're gonna take the shaft, we're gonna take everything with us. That way we make sure it all fits. All right guys, so Dalton drove me over to the local Napa here, like Johnstown, Gloverville, wherever it is. And we probably spent about 45 minutes there. And they finally found a part number that's close to our seal. It's a hair off, but we think it's gonna work. Problem is they didn't have it. It was nowhere in the neighborhood. He made some calls to some other local stores. They didn't have it. There is one about an hour away at another store. So Dalton gets off work here in like half an hour. So he's gonna take me back over to the pilot, and who did you say he's gonna drive me? Mikey. So Mikey's gonna take me over there in the service truck to pick up the seal that I've paid for. Hopefully we get back on track and get this thing put back together. All right, so we made it back to the shop. I've got the seal installed. We've got a bead of sealant around the outer edge. I've greased the splines. Talon's under the truck waiting for me. I'm gonna hand it to him, do the install. Just pray that everything goes right. Just try. Thank you. So the tricky part will be lining up the splines where you can't see in there. But it should all fall into place. think once you get that kind of aligned right, it should automatically line up that inner piece. Does it feel like the inner shaft is engaged?
Yeah, 100%. That's
okay.
it. But
And you get your top at the top?
So the top, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
All right, I guess just set it in there and I'll go get your bolts.
It's not in all the way, but
Wiggle the shaft some, maybe it'll drop in further.
no, the shaft's completely engaged.
Okay.
It's in there.
Let me go get your bolts, maybe it'll draw in.
Why is the top one not? That top one's pretty tight.
All right, go ahead and get the other three seated. All right, well that looks like it was a success. So now I'm gonna take the yoke down to them after I grease the splines on it. And then I had to go find the nut and the lock washer for it. Now the yoke itself doesn't actively move in its operation. So greasing it isn't really for lubrication under load. It's just for assembly. That way as we torque it down, there's nothing adding any extra resistance as we try to tighten up that the yoke nut, but also it adds corrosion resistance, so it's less likely to rust as soon. All right, Mikey is pumping the rear end full of 75/90. Talon has just removed the old U-joint, and we're getting ready to put the new one in. All right, Talon just finished up the drive shaft, and we found a loose bolt on an airbag we had to tighten up. We think everything underneath is done. Time to put the wheels back on. All right, one side back on. We still gotta clean all the oil out of that wheel. It's pretty yucky in there. All right, guys, truck is 100% put back together. It's off the jacks. Wheels are back on it. Right now I've got the airbags a little bit overextended. You can see he's sitting kind of high. I'm gonna take some of the air out of it, remove the wheel chocks, and then we take it for a lap around the parking lot. And if all that is good, I'm gonna do a very short road test with it. And maybe all is well. Fingers are crossed. Okay, guys, no diff lock activated. I put it into first gear, let out the clutch, and it rolled out into the parking lot. I've got trucks parking kind of in my way at the moment, so I'm just being patient, let them do their thing, because I want to do a couple laps around the parking lot before I actually get out straight. I want to make sure the oil gets moving to all those other bearings and stuff without any real load on them before I try getting up to speed. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. Good news, guys, good news. It passed the road test. We brought it back to the shop. We all got underneath it. We double checked everything, retorqued all the bolts, looked for oil leaks. We did find a small oil leak. We think we fixed it. There's one hole that there is nothing to actually bolt to. So we had to put some silicone in there. We showed the bolt that was smaller into it, kind of like the bottom thing. We didn't realize there was one at the top too. But we'll let that silicone dry overnight. After that, all I did is drive it out into the parking lot very slowly. We are hooked up to the trailer. Everything in the trailer is tied down. Tools are tied up. Everything for the most part. We're ready to roll in the morning. I am so excited. Now I did feel bad. You see this guy in the blue tanker back here? Well, blue tractor with a tanker. He was in our spot, and I had to wake him up and ask him to move so that I could back in to get to my trailer, and I felt terrible about that, but I wanted all of this done tonight so that once I take a shower and we do our laundry, because now I've got piles of grubby clothes that we've just gotten greasy and nasty, and I don't want to haul them around with us, so we want to go in there and do the laundry tonight, get something to eat, take showers. When we come back, we can just tidy up the last couple things in Goliath that we need to. In the morning, all we got to do when the truck's warming up is put the generator away, take the wheel chock out from underneath the tire, put the steps in, and we can roll. All right, guys, so we've had showers and we got our laundry done, and it's about time to settle down for the night. And it's also about time to finally close this video. After 3 days of trying to get this truck back on the road, I think we finally got it done. Fingers crossed tomorrow. We're praying to whoever will listen. We're trying to spread good karma and juju, whatever it takes to get down the road to where we got to go. Still planning going to see my family a little bit, so it's a short drive tomorrow, assuming everything goes well. But before we close the video, I have to give a huge shout out to the guys here at Southern Tire Mart and even the entire crew here at the Pilot. Just everybody has been awesome. You know, Josh, Nate, Mikey, Dalton, all the guys here were awesome. They really were. They treated me very fairly. And I got to say this, they did it before they knew I had a YouTube channel. They weren't doing it for promotion. They weren't doing it for any other reason. They're just truly nice people that wanted to help us out. We were probably 3 or 4 days in before they realized that we had a channel. I didn't kind of like flaunt that or anything like that. They just were willing to help. Inside the Pilot, every morning, JR was in there. He was really friendly. And Terry, the manager, Mike, even Bryce, and then the night crew, John and Tasha, all great people. And I didn't get the names of the girls that were working over at the Taco Bell, but they were all awesome. Understaffed, working their butts off and still getting it done, and they were super friendly the whole time. So we're really happy for that, and it's been great. Looking as I'm recording this, guys are coming in from a late roadside call. It's about 10 o'clock at night, so maybe 10:30, I'm not even sure. But all in all, we're glad that it's done. It's 10 days that we've been here, and 10 days too long in my opinion, but I'm hoping the rest of this trip will go well. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series more than I did. And until the next time we see you, keep those engines running. Midnight oil?
Oh, yeah. Dalton said he wanted to be in your video.
Oh, I thought you went home earlier.
He did.